Okay, so good morning, everyone. So now let us talk about the two examples of short story. The first one is the very last story of Huli, and the second one would be the execution. But first, let us define what is short story. So short story is a piece of prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting and focuses on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single effect or mood. The short story is one of the oldest type of literature and has existed in the form of legends, mythic tales, folk tales, fairy tales, fables, and anecdotes in various ancient communities across the world. The modern short story was developed in the early 19th century. So before we will know the plot and the characters of the very last story of Huli, we will have a brief background of the author. So who is Lilia Quindoza Santiago? So Santiago was born in Manaoag, Pangasinan, and grew up in Baguio where she studied. In 1972, she was among the student activists who were arrested, detained, and tortured by the military under Ferdinand Marcos regime. Santiago made a home in the academe teaching, a longtime professor at the University of the Philippines. And also, she served as an assistant professor for Ilocano at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. Recently, she had been based in Virginia, where she taught at the Tidewater Community College in Norfolk. Also, she would turn out to be one of the country's most prolific writers with over 20 books to her name, including collections of poetry, short stories, and a novel. And also, Santiago is remembered as a prolific writer and passionate educator and died at the age of 72. So now, let us know the setting of the story, the very last story of Huli by Lilia Quindoza Santiago. The story began at dawn when Huli, a mute garbage woman, screamed loudly and woke the people of her town, Di Matanto, which is also where the whole story occurred. The story revolved around the time when Huli Hindi Matanto, which started as her being a baby born from a disgraced child from a rich family, and to when the story ended, left her mad. Interestingly, the name of the town, Di Matanto, is a word in the Filipino language which means incomprehensible or not understandable. So this wordplay seems a little self-evident, but really crafty because it somehow explains the story of the people against Huli, and as well as their lives as well, which can be both described as tangled, tattered, and does not know where it's going. The plot surrounds on Huli's life, from her deafening shrill at dawn from killing Tinyong, her life as garbage woman roaming around the streets, then going back in time to tell her story since she was a child. When she grew up to be abused for her disability and to her on the caring hands of Tinyong, she was molested by the town investigator up to her murdering Tinyong, and on the last part, which is just a lamentation of all the things that happened to her and the town. So we have here the characters of the story. So the first one is Huli. Huli is a mute garbage woman. Although she is mute, she is not deaf, which means she has heard all the things that people of the Matanto have thrown against her. In this story, she was frequently the talk of the town because of her appearance and as well as her unknown origin, especially on how she came to the Matanto. Huli, most of the time, just ignores it. But when she realized she could fight, she fought. So this character symbolizes helplessness. Helplessness when we cannot speak and stand for ourselves, and how in these times of helplessness, we wake up our inner demons and to do things which we become delusional and impose new kinds of values. The character also symbolizes the poor Filipino people. The poor Filipino people criticizing and lamenting the very society where they belong, a society where their voices cannot be heard, and the result of this is very devastating, that those poor people cause destruction upon themselves. We also have Francisca, Huli's mother and the town's tailor. The town thought of her as her aunt because she introduced Huli as her niece. Francisca gave birth to Huli without her lover. This made her family angry and then tried to kill her baby. Francisca shows an incredible aspect of humanity. She shows an incredible aspect of humanity, love, as well as one of its terrible aspects, cowardice from staining her and her family's reputation. Another character, we have Tinyong. Tinyong, the barangay tanod, whom Huli had slain at the dawn. He helped Huli to survive, and also he is the medium of goodness. He was a person who only knows how to pity. And then the town investigator. The town investigator sexually harassed Huli. He pushed Huli to do such horrendous thing. This character symbolizes evil in the society who always hides from sight. Someone who is capable of doing evil for the sake of evil. He is the one who triggered Huli to kill Tinyong, who was just trying to help her. And then we have the people of the Matanto. So people of the Matanto was the one that set Huli's eyes on fire. It made her aware of the people, how they love and how they kill. It made her see the people's path towards the future, only concerned with looking as pleasant as possible, and is very crooked and tangled and does not know where it is going. So those are the characters of the story, and now let's move on to the analysis of the theme. A lot of themes can be brought from this story, like the triumph of evil over good, or the magnitude of the effects of bullying, and a lot more. But the story seems to emphasize the plight of the Filipino society. The story emphasizes the voiceless Filipino people, which was mentioned a lot earlier, and how these unheard voices are always controlled and modified and manipulated for the sake of an unknown gain. The story teaches a lesson that life is tough. The character encounters challenges in her life. She faces the darkness by making brave decisions. She was molested, judged, and humiliated. But above all, she chooses not to give up amidst the problem. So now is the genre of literature being used in the story. So the genre of literature being used, we have literary fiction, mystery, thriller. The story is a literary fiction in which it considered works with artistic value and literary merit. They often include political criticism, social commentary, and reflections on humanity. Literary fiction are novels that are typically character-driven as opposed to being plot-driven and follow a character's inner story. So the story involves mystery. When we say mystery, it is also called detective fiction. Follow a detective solving a case from start to finish. They drop clues and slowly reveal information, turning the reader into a detective trying to solve the case too. Mystery novels start with an exciting hook keep readers interested with suspenseful pacing, and end with a satisfying conclusion that answers all of the reader's outstanding questions. Also, the story involves thriller or a dark, mysterious, and suspenseful plot-driven stories. They very seldom include comedic elements, but what they lack in humor, they made up for in suspense. So that is all about the very last story of Huli. And now would be the execution by Charleson Ong. So who is Charleson Ong? Charleson Ong is a multi-awarded fictionist. He was born on July 6, 1960, and he obtained AB Psychology from UP Diliman in 1977. He won numerous grants and awards for his fiction, including the Palanca Award and the Dr. Jose Rizal Award for Excellence. His short stories range from parodies of well-loved Filipino text to insightful treatments of Chinese Filipino culture. He currently teaches literature and creative writing at the University of the Philippines, Department of English and Comparative Literature. So the story is set on the initial years of the martial law period. An incident following the declaration of martial law has alienated all the members of the Lim family from each other. Here is the plot. The once happy family of a field Chinese family was wrecked by an event brought about the declaration of martial law. Such incidents have made each character distant from one another. And then the characters, we have Mario Valderrama. Mario Valderrama is a son of Filipino-Chinese trade merchant. We have Lim Bianso, Mario's father, who sympathized with Ganso. And the mother, the wife of Lim and a Filipina. So the conflict of the story is after witnessing the death of his friend, Mario's father has not forgotten the incident and he remains affected by it. The exposition, the story delineates the experience of a young boy who witnessed how a political crisis has put so much pressure on their family unity. So the theme of the story is all about courage and determination. Courage and strong determination to live our life the way we want it to be without being wary of our past and the society we live in. So now is for the moral lessons of the story. So the story teaches true love and friendship are tested during time of adversities. The social milieu we live in is something that we cannot just ignore because it will always have a strong impact on our lives. No matter how a person tries to move on from his past, it will always linger on like our own shadow. So these are the moral lessons from the story, The Execution. So the genre of literature, we have historical. Historical fiction are novels. Historical fiction novels takes place in the past, written with a careful balance of research and creativity. They transport readers to another time and place, which can be real, imagined, or a combination of both. Many historical novels tell stories that involve actual historical figures or historical events within historical settings. And then the story talks also about mystery, wherein they drop clues and slowly reveal information, turning the reader into a detective trying to solve the case. We also have thriller, are dark, mysterious, and suspenseful plot-driven stories.